right. Jason Aldean's music video for Try This in a Small Town has been canceled. Canceled by the internet. We'll dive into sort of the, video and the imagery and stuff. But, man, these people are, it's such a stretch. So Ashton Pittman, he is a news editor for the Mississippi Free Press. So Jason Aldean filmed this music video called Don't Try That in a Small Town, something like that. And he does it in front of this old historic courthouse in Columbia, Tennessee. It's the Maury County Courthouse. So Ashton Pittman, again, a news editor, points out that this particular courthouse has a pretty shady past historically. He wrote, Jason Aldean shot this at the site where a white lynch mob strung Henry Cote up at the Maury County Courthouse in Columbia, Tennessee, after dragging his body through the streets with a car in 1927. That's where Aldean chose to sing about murdering people who don't respect the police. So again, this is a news editor, by the way. But look, that's a horrifying history, right? And we all know that our country has some really awful things about its past, including lynchings and racism. And that's an awful story about what happened in front of this courthouse. But it was 100 years ago. It was 100 years ago. So Jason Aldean, and I'll give you a little more context into the video itself, but in response to that criticism that Jason Aldean filmed this music video in front of a courthouse where a black man was lynched, he was drove through the streets, and there are people who find that distasteful given the lyrics in the video, CMT has removed the video. This is from the Wall Street Journal. CMT removes Jason Aldean's video for Try That in a Small Town because it was filmed at the site of a 1927 lynching. So I'll read that we didn't want to play the song because of copyright issues, but we're going to show you who are watching on the stream some of the video, and I'll read to you some of the lyrics. But it's very clear that he's talking about these rioters that we saw in the country, especially in 2020, and an increase in crime. And it was the gist of it is like, try that stuff in a small town and see what happens to you. So Nicole, you can roll some of that video and I'll just read the verse. Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjack an old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool? Well, act a fool if you like. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough. Well, try that in a small town. See how far you make it down the road. Round here, we take care of our own. You cross that line, it won't take long for you to find out. I recommend you don't try that in a small town. And it goes on from there, and you're seeing the imagery of riots that happened, anti-police riots, for instance, and then he's playing this song with an American flag behind him in front of this courthouse that, again, has this really dark, shaded history. So Jason Aldean put out this pretty lengthy statement. I'll read, I think I can read all of it or part of it. Jason Aldean said, in the past 24 hours, I've been accused of releasing a pro-lynching song. And that is what the accusation is. That there's no imagery of lynching in the video. I want to note that. But the fact that he's standing in front of a courthouse talking about, yes, vigilante justice, which I'm not a believer in, by the way, in front of a courthouse where a lynching happened 100 years ago. People are saying it's pro-lynching, which is quite the stretch. He said, in the past 24 hours, I've been accused of releasing a pro-lynching song, a song that has been out since May, and was subject to a comparison that I, direct quote, was not too pleased with the nationwide BLM protests. These references are not only meritless, but dangerous. There is not a single lyric in the song that references race or points to it, and there isn't a single video clip that isn't real news footage. And while I can try and respect others to have their own interpretation of a song with music, this one goes too far. As so many have pointed out, I was present at Route 91, where so many lost their lives, and our community, that's where the nation's, I think it's still the nation's deadliest mass shooting happened at that country music festival in Vegas, where so many lost their lives, and our community recently suffered another heartbreaking tragedy. No one, including me, wants to continue to see senseless headlines or families ripped apart. Try that in a small town, for me, refers to the feeling of a community that I had growing up, where we took care of our neighbors regardless of differences of background or belief, because they were our neighbors, and that was above any differences. My political views have never been something I've hidden from, and I know that a lot of us in this country don't agree on how we get back to a sense of normalcy where we go at least a day without a headline that keeps us up at night. But the desire for it that's what the song is about. So look, we can have disagreements about should he have known? Was that the right place to film the video? Should he have been more sensitive to the history of that courthouse? Again, assuming he even knew, again, 100 years ago, what the history of that courthouse is. I refuse to buy into the label of the song as pro-lynching, when again, there is not a single imagery or reference to lynching. I think that is an extreme stretch. But why I really truly believe the backlash to this is unbelievable. There's a news guy, his name's Colin Rugg, on Twitter, who I'm just going to read his tweet because it sums up exactly how I feel about this whole situation. You know, I read the lyrics in the Jason Aldean song, which are basically anti-crime. He's opposed to crime, right? So this tweet from Colin Rugg reads as follows, and it is such an excellent point. He said, country music television has pulled Jason Aldean's music video, Try That in a Small Town, in response to media outrage. In the music video, Aldean calls out left-wing violence, specifically violence against law enforcement. Apparently, this is controversial and hateful, according to the left. And then he writes out some of the lyrics. Sucker punch somebody on a sidewalk, carjack an old lady at a red light, pull a gun on the owner of a liquor store. You think it's cool? Well, act a fool if you like. Cuss out a cop, spit in his face, stomp on the flag and light it up. Yeah, you think you're tough. He said, he made the point that people rap constantly about drugs, about murdering people. I mean, think of some of the lyrics from some of the rap songs when we were growing up about sex, drugs, violence, being gang members, killing people, committing shootings, all measure of things that are apparently, according to the media, perfectly fine. Any measure of violent discussion in rap music, perfectly fine. But when you have a white country music singer who sings a song about standing up to lawlessness, not okay. Got to cancel him. Got to take down the music video. Does that seem even in the realm of fair or sane? Now, if you took issue with all of it, if you had songs and rap music, for instance, where they were glorifying violence, glorifying gang membership, et cetera, then and the media as an institution was standing up to those and saying, oh no, those music videos have to be taken down off MTV, off VH1, whatever it is. And then you also said that about this Jason Aldean video, I would feel completely differently. It's the moral inconsistency that I have an issue with. Either we're okay with the glorification of violence in music videos or we're not. Now, Jason Aldean is saying in this song, basically vigilante justice. Like, you try these things in a small town, see how far you get down the street, suggesting, in my opinion, that they'd probably take care of business on their own, which I don't agree with either. But it is not any worse than thousands of other songs that explicitly talk about committing acts of violence, committing crimes, etc. Nicole, are you going to continue to be a Jason Aldean fan?
Oh, yeah, I love Jason. I mean, I think his wife has not been secretive with her political beliefs as well. She's a big Trump supporter, and she's been attacked for that before. And of course he's going to get attacked for this. Of course he is. It's who plays into it. And we see people's true colors. And it's funny that people say, I mean, I've seen tweets of saying, oh yeah, like, we're dumb, Jason, that like, we don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is secretive. Like, they're acknowledging that it's not mentioned, but saying what he's implying. Yeah. And I just think it's funny that people know people's beliefs and heart, even.
Yeah. But we're in your mind, Jason.
But they claim the opposite. They say that, they claim it's just hypocritical in the way that they measure people's hearts and minds.
It's political. It's political and hypocritical.
It's all politics. Yeah. And they're just using, they manipulate a situation. And I do think that the Bud Lights of the world and all of these companies that are really feeling this backlash, I think it's people saying enough is enough. And now people are saying, oh, CMT, we're done, because CMT, bowed out and caved to the mob. And I think that's going to get stronger and stronger and stop caving. People, I mean, that's the only way to get this message across, that, the majority is done with this ridiculous behavior and trying to divide. Say, here's a video that says, we've had enough. We don't want violence. We don't want, this spitting on cops and
Yeah.
violence in the street and women getting, or, you know, old ladies getting carjacked. And that can even be taken out of context and taken out of,
Pro-lynching.
yeah,
Pro-lynching.
it's called pro-lynching.
Yeah, which we did have an old lady carjacked in our state. And so it's like somebody's trying to take a stand to violence and they're like, pro-lynching. We know what's in your heart. You're a terrible person.
Right. And he lives in Tennessee. He went to a Tennessee courthouse. So I assume that there's probably multiple courthouses in the South and that may have had similar histories. He went to the one that, you know, the courthouse that's closest to where he lives probably. And, you know, how are you supposed to, how are you supposed to know the context of everything? I mean, I guess he could have gone back that far, but also courthouse represent justice in this country.
Right.
And so to take it and put a
That seems like the
certain
more likely
scene on
tie,
it.
where he's like, we want somewhere that's reflective of justice. We're
Right.
talking about crime.
But
right?
instead,
but
it's like, let's look for this
1927
terrible thing that
lynching,
happened 100
right.
years ago.
But you make a good point that there's probably a lot of places in the South in this country that have been the scene of lynchings.
Right.
And that's horrible. But in Tennessee, I imagine that happened quite a bit.
Right.
Again, unfortunately, but the idea that rather than use your brain and say, okay, he probably picked that location because it's a courthouse. We're talking about justice. You're like, oh, he picked that location and included those lyrics in his song because of a 1927 lynching, and this has some reflection of it. It's like, you are literally,
Stop.
you are searching for things to call racist. You are searching for ways to be the victim and to be offended. But I'll also point out with CMT, and we're spending way more time on this than I thought we would, but I'll also point out with CMT that I can think of several country music songs that have, you know, glorified violence in some way. For instance, Gunpowder and Lead. Like you're
Right.
talking about, even though it's an abuser, you're talking about shooting someone,
Yes.
right? So
Oh,
it's like,
there's-
okay, so you don't have an issue with that. So this has to be like what you are now believing is a racial undertone of this particular song, which is such a stretch. And again, like you said, goes against sort of the audience of country music, just like Bud Light, and it's not going to end well for them.